Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Network Leadership webinar series, Lessons from the Field. We are so excited to have all of you here today. We're just letting everyone come in from the waiting room, and as we get started on this, we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of a background on how we got here, what this webinar series is about, and then it is my pleasure to get to introduce our speaker for today. I don't think you'll be disappointed. It'll be a great day. So first thing I think I'll do is ask everyone to just mute yourself. We're not using a webinar service today, so we can hear you if you are not muted. Okay, so I am really pleased today that our speaker, Ericka Burroughs-Girardi, is joining us for this webinar on virtual facilitation and collaboration in an age of COVID-19. I'm going to introduce Ericka in just a moment, but first I want to tell you a little bit about who we are and how we got here. I'm Danielle Varda. I'm our CEO. And founder of Visible Network Labs. I'm also a professor at the School of Public Affairs at the University of Colorado, Denver, which is our partner in this work on these webinars. We are co-sponsors of this series and all of our network leadership training. So it's really fun to work with Dr. Robin Mobbs, who is the co-director of the Center on Network Science over there on this work. I'm just a big network geek who loves to talk about this stuff. So these webinars are one of my favorite things. At Visible Network Labs, our mission is to make these invisible networks visible. This series that we do for the webinars and the blogs, we call our Visible Us series. And really, one of our goals in all of this work is not just to bring good support and capacity building to communities that are especially doing work on solving big problems, but to really make visible the people behind all of this work that, like Ericka, who are about as intriguing as the networks that we work in. So that's one of our goals, is to make our personal support networks, our social systems, and the people behind all of these networks really visible. We do this in three ways. I'll just mention real quick. This is our Network Leadership Training Academy that we put on every year. And of course, this was our ad. I went back and found it for 2020. This is what we put out, early in the year in 2020. We shifted, like the whole world did, to virtual and did a 6-month Network Leadership Training Academy session. So that's where we get to bring the community together and all of our amazing trainers. This is our in-person event, but our online event has turned out to be equally exciting. We're also the authors and owners of the Partner tool. Partner is a social connectedness platform. It's used by communities all over the world to measure their networks, keep track of them, watch them grow longitudinally, and use that data and information to build stronger, better networks. And we also finally are really proud of our Partner Me work that we do, which is our contribution to the social determinants of health kind of a field, where we provide this screener on a person's social connectedness that we can link and understand their risks of adverse social connectedness, loneliness, and social isolation, and link people to resources in the community. So these are the things that we're doing at Visible Network Labs, and I always love to take this opportunity to brag about that a little bit. Behind me, behind the screens, are almost a 20-person team now of developers and data scientists and communicators, and really super passionate people about solving the problem of social connectedness and how it impacts our health and well-being outcomes. All right, so I am going to get right into this because it's why we're all here. So I'm really pleased that Ericka said yes when we asked her to come and do this. Ericka is the Senior Outreach Specialist at the County Health Rankings and Roadmaps. Her primary role is to manage the CHRNR's webinar productions. Ericka holds an MA in Anthropology from the University of South Florida and an MPH from the University of South Carolina. She resides in Florida, where in her spare time she volunteers at the food pantry at her church. She and her husband are the proud foster parents of a 12-year-old dog, Sable. So we know Ericka because of our own work with County Health Rankings and Roadmap. We've been working with County Health Rankings and Roadmaps for a few years, and the team there, led by Kate Kingery, and it has been an extra bonus and an extra pleasure to get to know Ericka through all of that work. So we've watched CHRNR go through some changes in growth over the last few years, but you'll be curious about CHRNR as soon as Ericka starts to talk about it. But be sure to check that organization, that program out as well. It's just amazing data and resources for community building and translating data into practice to really build strong, healthy communities. So one of our goals in this webinar series, you can probably already tell, is to have fun and make this a great learning experience. Ericka is a great partner in that. And one of the things that we like to do before we ask her to speak is to spend a minute with her and get to know her a little bit. Because as I mentioned, we really believe that making the people behind the networks visible is as important as making it more obvious how we should even run these networks. So just for a few minutes, I have some questions for Ericka that I'm going to ask, and I'll ask her to just share with us, both, her professional life and maybe a little bit about her personal life, so we can get to know her a little bit. But just to get started, Ericka, if you can would you tell us a little bit about CHRNR and what you do there, and how what you do fits into the rest of the program? And sorry, just before you start, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so we can see everyone's faces. But if you want to just see our speaker, remember that you can change your settings so that just the speaker is highlighted on your screen. And so that's kind of one way to get to focus on just her. So Ericka, let's go ahead.
Yeah. Well, first I want to thank you. And when you said, if you want to just focus on a speaker, I'm like, oh my God. So then I'm like, are my teeth okay? Because I probably look really big to everyone now. Put it in gallery view. But anyway, it's exciting to be here. I'm even more excited that there are people joining us today that I know. I was like, I saw Matthew Call, and I saw Elise Peters, and James Lloyd, who's actually from County Health Rankings and Roadmaps, so is joining us right now. So welcome everyone, and I look forward to spending some time with you today to talk about how we can do engaging facilitation and collaboration in the age of COVID. But go ahead, Daniel. What questions do you have for me? I'm on the catbird seat. Go ahead, girl.
Okay. All right. Well, first, I just want to know, how did you get here? Becoming a network leader kind of happens by chance, I think, for a lot of us. We suddenly find ourselves working in networks, and all of us are like, how did we get, how did I get into this amazing job where I get to do all of these amazing things and call my work about networks? And I'm guessing that most people on the call are feeling that as well. So how did you find yourself working in networks and in the role that you are today?
You know what? You're right. It was sort of like a revelation, just like what you just described. And I've always been someone who really likes to connect people. I like to work with people as thought partners. I mean, even in the jobs I've had, including my current one, people say, well, why do you always have to have a thought partner? But I'm a strong believer in thinking that two brains are better than one, and three is better than two, right?
Yeah.
So I am having a little bit of echo, Daniel, so I'm going to ask you to mute just in case it's coming from your room. But I discovered that my work and my role in being able to facilitate and support networks has actually helped communities. And oh my God, what a better feeling. There is no better feeling than to know that the work that you do simply as a facilitator or a supporter can empower people to do their work better and empower them to create a healthier environment. So yeah, I've been doing that for most of my career.
Awesome. Well, apologies if I'm echoing. You are obviously, it sounds like a natural network leader. It makes sense to you. So I would guess that a lot of us on the call have that same feeling. So just a couple more questions, and I promise I'm going to let you go do your presentation. What's been your greatest challenge as a network leader?
Hmm. I think I would have to say, as a network leader, remember I was telling you how much I love to empower other people. I think for me, the greatest challenge is helping people to see that they have the power to support networks or even facilitate networks. People feel it's out of their skill set or their people, they just don't have the skills, the knowledge, or the experience to do that. But we all have that. We all to have work within multiple networks, so we often don't even realize that we work within. And we are all playing roles and helping to support networks without realizing it. So it's actually helping people to understand what is their role. And the good thing about VNL is now that I've been associated with VNL, I've learned how to do the type of work that I do more efficiently and more effectively. I remember saying to you, I didn't even know there was a science. There's a science behind network building. Yes. And if you use that science, you can be more efficient in the work that you do and more productive.
Awesome. Well, you just talked about a lot of the values that we believe in network leadership. And one of the reasons we do this webinar, we believe network leadership is for everyone, not just the leader of the network. That makes it network leadership. So, and I know you're going to talk a little bit about today how to build that kind of connection and community. My last question, just so we can get to know you, because believe me, you all, this is a rare moment. We get some extra time with Ericka. What do you like to do for fun when you're not geeking out on networks?
Yeah,
Yeah,
geek.
geek.
I'm a
I'm a
natural
natural.
geek. And let me tell you, one of the things that I really love to do, for those of you who don't know me, as well
As
as
well as
James, who's on this call, is that I am a big history fan. My favorite period of history is the American Revolution. I wherever I go, whatever city I go to, I make it a point to visit a historical museum or a historical house museum, and my whole life is built around history. I've done history. I've done living history, um, and I don't want to call it reenacting, but just like living history, being able to interpret how people would have lived in the past. I've done that for years as a volunteer. I travel to historic cities whenever I can't get a chance. It's what I love to do.
awesome. Well, great. I imagine a lot of that plays into what you know and do every day. So pretty awesome. Okay, I am going to let go of the reins and I'm just going to turn them all over to you and let you go. So we're all here and super excited. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Danielle.
Danielle.
And we're gonna, for the time that we're together, that I'm with you, I promise you, we're gonna have lots of fun. I'm excited to see a lot of people on the call today on in this meeting because it shows the value of virtual facilitation and collaboration. It shows that we all have an interest in doing this type of work. So I'm going to dig right in and um, go ahead and share my screen. So you already know who I am, but I will let you know that not Matthew, because I used to work with Matthew, but Alex is going to send you or make available a copy of the slides today. So you'll have that available to you after the presentation. One thing that I want to mention is that County Health Rankings and Roadmaps is housed at the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute, which is in Madison, Wisconsin. I live in Florida and gratefully live in Florida because I am not a fan of cold weather, but that's where we are housed. And because of the virtual world that we now all find ourselves in, I'm able to still work for County Health Rankings and Roadmaps while living in warm and sunny Florida. But we also, this program is a collaboration with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And If you haven't heard of County Health Rankings and Roadmaps, I want to encourage you to visit our website. Danielle told you a little bit about what it is that we do. We are known primarily for ranking the health of counties, and we do rank the health of counties across most of the counties in the United States. And you know, we do this primarily so that community leaders and residents can get together and figure out how they can begin to build a healthy community. But in order for you to figure out how to do that, you got to kind of know what you're working with. So we provide data on multiple data points for people to know how well their community is performing on in data metrics. And we do an algorithm that comes up, and you know, we're able to tell you which county is performing the best in certain measures and which counties are quite challenged. But it does give you some data, it gives you something to work with as you begin to think about how can I create a healthier community. So we also provide evidence, you know, let you know here are some strategies and policies and programs that we know work, because we kind of do all the research and stuff for you to let you know what is out there and what's available. We provide examples of how to do that. And we give guidance. We actually are one of the folks that still provide like one-to-one, one-person-to-one-person guidance. We can talk to you on the phone or video calls like this and help you think through challenges that you may be encountering in your community as you think about how to create a healthier environment. And lastly, stories. Stories are so important. You're going to hear me share stories about the communities that I have worked with, because it gives you examples of what it can be for your community. I'm in that guidance department. Danielle was asking me, like, what is it that you do? This is my work. I am an extreme extrovert, so I couldn't be a data person because then I'd be working with numbers all day. I can't be an evidence person because then I'd be in the research part. I have to be in a part where I can connect with people, and that's my area, which is guidance. So you heard me mention Alex. Alex is actually one of Danielle's colleagues. Alex is the marketing and communications manager at Visible Network Labs, and Alex has agreed to help me with the presentation. He's actually going to be the person handling all of our technology needs. If you have an issue with technology or something like that going on, just send a private chat to Alex. And he's also going to be engaging you in the chat and also helping to launch a couple of polls that we're going to do as a part of the conversation that we're having today. So there's a few questions I want to be able to answer for you as we go through our talk today. Hopefully I've already answered who is County Health Rankings and Roadmaps and what it is that we do. Why is building virtual community important? Why is that important to us? And then hopefully we'll land on or end with, how can I create an engaging virtual environment? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So one question I want to ask you, and I want you to think about this. You don't have to chat it in, but if you want to chat it in, that's fine. But how did America change a year ago in February 2020? You know, Danielle talked about what happened with the Network Leadership Academy, which, by the way, Danielle, you had to change it and make it virtual, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. But how did it change in 2020? For one thing, we were all told that we have to stay home. We had to retreat to our homes and not go to work. Children could not go to school. Babies could not go to daycare. Our little fur babies who may have gone to like the doggy daycares couldn't go there. They had to be with us. So think about how your life changed in 2020. If you did have to go out, a lot of times you experience this, having to get a temperature check. And even now, all of our hands are still chafed from the multiple hand washings that we have or the exposure to hand sanitizer that we have throughout the day. And of course, this became part of our wardrobe that we have. And I don't know about you all, but for all of you out there, the lipstick wearers, you're probably like me. I haven't bought a tube of lipstick since 2019 because the only time that I wore lipstick was when I was doing a presentation. So I was home all the time. So I very, I mean, rarely, I want to say, rarely wore makeup or lipstick or anything like that. So, even though all of those changes happened in our life in 2020, there were opportunities, and there were opportunities for collaboration that happened. And I want you to think about what opportunities you may have seen when we were in a uh, an age, if you will, as what we're calling it today, of having to be secluded to our homes, and we could not engage somebody face to face in the same room. What opportunities came from that? And I do want you to use the chat in this part, and I'm going to ask Alex to read out some of the answers in just a little bit. But if you haven't used chat before, I want you to look in your viewer windows, usually at the bottom it says chat, and go ahead and open that up and put in your response. Make sure you are typing to everyone and just simply push enter. So what opportunities did you see? There's a couple things that I want to lift up that I saw happen as I continued my work of actually helping to support communities and helping to support networks. One thing I noticed is that within our networks, it connected us to more people. You may have noticed that too. It compelled us to build technology skills. Um, all of us had to do that. I mean, there are areas of the country where broadband is still an issue. And one of the good things, if you want to think about it from that point of view, that happened with the pandemic is that it's shown a light on the need for us to expand broadband to certain corners of our country where broadband was weak. And now that's happening. So that's a good thing. Other opportunities for collaboration, it erased the barrier of distance. I remember when I used to provide coaching support to one partnership that was based in Texas and traveling to the place where they would meet because they would all meet in the same room. This is all how we used to do things. We would all meet in the same room with our partnership to do the work that we do. And invariably, somebody was always late to those meetings because they had to travel such far distances. But with virtual connection, they didn't have to do that anymore. And then one thing I want you to think about is the power that comes with a proximity, the power that comes with being with someone in the same room. Sometimes you want to call it the water cooler effect. When people are there in the same room, they're able to kind of just chat and have small talk with one another. A lot of times, collaboration happens that way too. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. But what about for those who are not part of that conversation? So, leveling that power that's achieved by proximity is something that we noticed during COVID. So, what opportunities did you observe? Alex, I'm going to ask you just to kind of lift up some of the responses in the chat.
Yeah, sure thing, Ericka. A lot of good answers here. I think it looks like definitely the most common one here is just that, there's been a lot of barriers, removed that allow a lot more participation, both, looking regionally. A lot of times regional partners might not be able to come to an event.
Right.
Also more disadvantaged groups, the cost associated with travel. One really interesting answer I like here is, who is this from? I can't see who this is from, but they said they actually find they're having almost more face-to-face interaction, and that they're having an easier time remembering people's names because they're having these face-to-face calls as opposed to these 300-person conferences where it's just impossible to create sort of those close connections. So that's almost counterintuitive to me, which is great. And then another one here, we've got greater document sharing and collaboration through digital information sharing through that, as well as sort of what we're doing here, more learning, more training from afar and through online programs. And then I also just see a lot of new apps and other programs that allow for mapping and drawing and working together as a team, even if you're not in the same room. So lots of great ideas here.
I love that, and I'm so glad that they're in the chat and that you were able to share. In fact, Alex, it would be helpful if you could actually share those with everyone as well as sharing the slides, because people need to hear how, if they have not thought about that, this to help remind them these are ways that collaboration happens even when we're not in the same room. So I'm glad that you're thinking about it from an opportunistic framework. So what I want to do now is I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I want to kind of process what it is that we've done thus far in the conversation that we've had. Hopefully you've been paying attention to any facilitation strategies that I may have had. Think back from when Danielle started the conversation all the way to this point. Let's stop sharing and feel free to unmute yourself and tell me, what are some things that you noticed in the facilitation as we started this conversation?
I noticed how important it was for the facilitators to be in tune with each other and understanding whose turn it is to speak. So I think that can be a little trickier when you're not in the same room.
Yeah, that's great, Kirby. You're absolutely right. What else?
Ericka, I think offering people the opportunity to introduce themselves in the chat, you get a little bit more of a personal introduction or some fun facts that humanize the person that you don't always get when you're just kind of going around the room and saying your name and maybe you're just your title and organization.
Right, exactly. So true.
I'll jump in. I know one of the things that Eric and I really got connected on was that you've probably been able to tell this. We're both kind of informal presenters. We're not, like coming on and reading the script the whole time. And I've found that, especially as we've gotten more comfortable with Zoom, it's nice to be able to have conversations, even in that virtual environment. And so being able to kind of talk to each other as humans through a virtual screen has been kind of a facilitation way that we've liked to hold meetings.
Yeah. All right, we're time for one more, and then I'm gonna share a few tips and tricks myself. Anything else someone wants to lift up?
Sure, I'll go. I noticed that you were making sure to focus on inclusion. Although a lot of us have a familiarity with Zoom, you guys put that slide up about the chat. Like, okay, if you haven't done this before, here's how you do it. This is where it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Never make assumptions. And Christina, you said it so well. In fact, let me go ahead and just share my screen because we're going to talk about that next. So I'm going to share a few tips. First of all, give people permission to experience life differently. When COVID-19 hit and we were all forced to do life differently, that change was sudden. Sudden change for any animal, including humans, is hard. It's not easy. And so we had caregivers, whether it's mom or dad, that now had to, instead of taking their child to school before they go to work, the child was in the home. And they all of a sudden was still working from work, still working, virtually. So they still had an office in their home, but they also became a teacher, the person that had to help their child with learning challenges. What they used to call back in the day, I'm old as dirt, so I'm just gonna call it, we used to call it the lunch lady. They had become the lunch lady too. There's so many things that we had to do. So you want to give people permission to experience life differently. We all had to be home with our fur babies. Like my fur baby's right here, sleeping on right behind me. Some of you have your cats walking across the laptops. That's fine. It's okay. It's okay. And you have to give people permission. You have to give grace. You can't expect people to be formal. And so, Danielle, I'm so glad that you pointed that out. The need to be informal is more important than ever because we have experienced life differently. Change is difficult. I always recommend having a sidekick. I introduced you to Alex today because guess what? I want to give you my undivided attention. And I would love to have your attention if I could in an undivided way. So I've asked Alex to manage the chat for me. I've asked Alex to handle any technology issues because I want to be able to focus on you. You will notice that I use a little trick that I call don't tell, but ask. I will always ask a lot of questions, even in my presentation. So the titles of my slides, the ones that I really, really want you to pay attention to, are always asked with a question. How did America change during COVID-19? How, what opportunities were there for collaboration? Why do I do that? Why do I ask instead of giving like a little short phrase? Because when we hear a question, we're trained, we're in tuned to listen for the answer. It's one way of it's a trick for getting your attention. It's a trick for you to say, I need to pay attention to that slide because the question is being asked of me. So I will ask those questions rather than telling you what's going to happen. And then what Christina was saying, never let people feel left out. Your participants need to be engaged. We often you don't want to come to meetings assuming that people know how to use the chat, assuming that they know how to do this, because that's one quick way of having people feel left out. Some people are too shy to speak and they have to use the chat. Some people are extroverts like me and they talk a lot, so they have to be asked to step back. So, like, let others talk. That's a facilitation skill that you need to use, but always be inclusive because everyone has a voice and that voice needs to be heard. You shouldn't be speaking for them. And then again, use pictures, animation, video snippets, whatever you can to keep people engaged because we are all distracted by things that are happening in our environment. And right now, our environment is very, very interactive because we may have kids at home or we may have fur babies or we may be cooking lunch at the same time. We are really trying to master the art of doing multiple things at one time, and the word escapes me. Multitasking. We have to multitask. So now that I've talked a lot about collaboration, I want to spend the rest of our time together answering this question: can I create an engaging virtual environment? I'm going to leave some time for us again to debrief what it is that we are chatting about and what it is that you're experiencing and what it is that you are feeling while we're doing this presentation. So I'm going to ask Alex to launch a poll. And I want you to answer this question. Is virtual connection rather, a barrier to communication? And I'm actually gonna stop sharing on this point. And Alex, that's not gonna take people too long to answer. So you can go ahead and share the results. Hopefully you've gotten a chance to click on that poll. Oh, someone says they want to answer yes and no. Did the poll come up for you all? It didn't come up. Alex, are you able to launch that again?
Yeah, let me try one more time here. Relaunch.
Okay, it came up for some. Someone said they saw it as well. So if you see it, go ahead and click on yes or no. Don't vote if you've already voted, though.
Yeah, we may be having a Zoom issue because it doesn't look like it's recognizing people's vote for some reason.
Okay. Okay. That's all right. We will go with the flow. That's something else that we're learning. We're learning with virtual connection. Technology is not perfect. Um,
Hmm.
oh, there it is. You're showing it now. Wow, mixed results. How about that? So some of you it's almost half and half, like 48% say yes and 53% said no. All right, here's the answer. It's a trick question. And the reason why it's a trick question is because I asked you, is it a barrier? And this is what I want you to think about how you can shift your mindset from that. People who think of barriers rather than opportunities sometimes think from a deficit mindset. Whenever there's a change, whenever something changes, whenever something is presented in front of you that is different than what you anticipated, always think from an opportunistic mindset. What is the opportunity here? Because those who think from an opportunistic mindset, those who think of the opportunity rather than a challenge, are the ones who often succeed. So think about the opportunities that lie within. That's the reason why I said, well, what opportunities did you see when you had COVID-19? I remember, Danielle, I want to use you as an example when you did the NLTA. And I don't know if you remember this, Danielle, but during the first meeting, you apologized that we had to do it virtually. And the NLTA, Danielle, you tell me if I'm wrong, it's usually 2.5 days, right, Danielle? Okay, so it's usually two and
Yeah.
a half, and they had to do it virtually. I took the NLTA, which is the National Leadership Training Academy, and VNL ended up spreading out the Leadership Academy over 6 months because they had to do it virtually. And they gave us little chunks each month, little chunks of information and homework and ways to apply it. It is one of the best training academies I've ever attended. And I told Danielle, I said, Danielle, if I had to do all of what you gave me in 2.5 days, I wouldn't have remembered a thing. Was able to absorb everything they gave me. I was like a sponge because I had little tidbits of information that I could then take and process. 2.5 hours of that, and those 2.5 hours was spent processing with other people. That was an opportunity to do things different, and it ended up for me being one of the best trainings I've ever had. So I need for you to think about things in an opportunistic way. All right. Now, does that mean there are things that you should acknowledge? Absolutely. Virtual connection is never going to replace an in-person connection where you can read people's body language, where you can maintain eye contact. I promise you, it's not going to replace that. That's true. But it is one of the most efficient ways of being inclusive. And some of you have already realized that because you had it in your chat. You said, we're able to reach communities, we're able to bring in folks that may otherwise never would have come to our meetings. Maybe they have issues with transportation. Maybe they have issues with childcare. Some of the partnerships that I coach, they'd be willing to have their meetings in the evening in order for more residents to attend their meetings. But they didn't have the funds or the resources or the capacity for childcare. But with virtual connection, they can now do that. They can now engage people who would not otherwise be there. So it is one of the most efficient ways to be inclusive. So I want you to, of course, acknowledge those things. But instead of thinking, can I create a virtual community? Will I commute? Or should I? Think of it this way. We will create a virtual community. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you some tips about what I mean when I say community. A virtual community is a community in which when people are connected, they think beyond just you're my partner, you're the person that's going to give me a resource. You are a community. You are a family. You are a group of people that's just, you look beyond just your professional aspect or your professional contribution to this work. You see each other as people. And yes, you can do that virtually. And I'm just have 4 small steps, 4 easy steps to help you do that. 1, start with an appropriate icebreaker for your meetings. 2, engage in small talk. Small talk is valuable. You learn a lot during small talk. 3, get to work. There's always things that you have to do. You do come to meetings for work. You come to meetings to make decisions. You come to meetings to collaborate. So yeah, you still have to get to work. And then 4, reflect on what just transpired in the meeting. So I'm going to talk about those briefly, and then I want to spend the rest of the time just answering your questions and sharing, having you all share tips among yourselves. So icebreakers can be fun, but they need to be appropriate. So I like fun icebreakers when I can. And here's a few that I just threw up on here as examples. Icebreakers don't have to take a long time. Like some people get a little bugged out by like, oh my gosh, we got to spend like 20 minutes doing an icebreaker. No, you don't. We're going to actually practice with one that literally takes only 60 seconds in a few minutes. And that's one is called Caption This. But you could do Name That Tune. You can do a work from home scavenger hunt. You can do charades in which you privately chat someone and say, this is your word that you need to act out. Here's one that I did a lot with my team when we used to meet, and it was called, Who is Your Favorite Disney Character and Why? And here's one that I did with a group. I remember that I was coaching. I did Who is Your Superhero and Why? And was absolutely blown away with responses. People were saying, you know, my mom is my superhero because she worked really hard so I could go to college. You know, certain civil rights leaders are my superhero. They inspire me to do the work that I do. So you can really learn a lot about people in a fun way with icebreakers. And it does exactly what it says. It breaks the ice so we know that we're all human. And we're more than just a label. We're more than just a title, a professional title. We're people. I want to give you 60 seconds to do this icebreaker. It's called Caption This. Take 60 seconds to write down a caption in the chat. Go right now. I'm going to count down 60 seconds. And I'm actually going to open up the chat. This is one time I will open up the chat because I just want to see what people are saying. Spa day. What's next? Right. I'm not going out there. I know that's right, especially for my colleagues in Wisconsin. They're very hardy people. Treat yourself. Exactly. I love it. Roughing it. That is so cute, Kelly. I love it. Petty necks. So cute. Oh my gosh. You guys are cute. Okay, so you actually came up with some captions I wouldn't even have thought of. But anyway, you can see how fun this is. Just something to do to actually break the ice. So, you know, I talked about how important it is for icebreakers to be fun. But what about when there is trauma, when there's shared trauma? One of the worst things you can do is come into a meeting and your goal is to build community. But while you're building community, you completely ignore what is heavy. You completely ignore the elephant in the room. Think about if you're in a community environment and several people in your meeting may have lost someone that was dear and near to them. Or the shared trauma that all of us felt on January 6th, right? You know, you leave the politics out. Just what did you feel? How shocked did you feel when you saw what was happening on January 6th? People need time to actually kind of let that heaviness go when they come into a meeting so that they clear their minds and they're in a better position to get to work. So allow space for that. Allow time for that. It shows that you're human. And more importantly, it builds trust. So building trust is so important when you want to build community. Understand in those times people may want to turn their camera off, and always come prepared with information about how people can get support if they need it. You know, some folks are afraid to talk about things that may be traumatic because they're like, oh my God, I can't heal it. I can't fix it. You're not there to fix it. You're not there to fix it. You're there to acknowledge it. But you can certainly provide opportunities for people to get more support. Whenever you ignore heaviness, it becomes a burden on you, but it becomes a burden across the entire partnership, the entire network, the entire team. You can't allow that to happen. So unburden yourself and then get to work. And always value small talk. Whenever I would work with communities, I've worked with communities across the United States, and I've always worked with them virtually. The entire time that I've worked for the University of Population Health Institute at County Health Rankings and Roadmaps, I've been in Florida. So I've always had virtual connections with people. And when I would meet with them, I would always open my meeting room a few minutes early so folks can get on and actually start just chatting with each other. And I remember when I was coaching a community in Jasper, Alabama, which is in a county called Walker County. It's about an hour west of Birmingham. I remember I had opened up my room early, and there was two people that came into the meeting, and they were talking, and they had never been to they had never met each other. And one person was talking about um, um, a mobile a mobile vehicle that did like it was like a market mobile market like of fresh foods and stuff, and he was talking about how they had gotten a grant to expand the mobile market, and there was someone else there in a meeting was talking about how this area that he serves is a food desert. And just like that, they were able to solve a problem because the guy said, well, we just got a grant to expand our service area. Let's go over to your area and be able to provide fresh vegetables for your community. That came out of just literally small talk. I'm serious. It was just small talk. But it helps build community. So I always encourage you to leave time for that. You saw Danielle do that very well in the beginning of the meeting. And Danielle didn't even see my slides. That's just Danielle. That's just how she does. And you saw her do that. Let's just have some small talk. Let's just get to know who Ericka is and beyond just being a presenter. It's valuable. And then you need to get to work. Now, I want you to think about these steps. I talked about breaking the ice. I've talked about the small talk. Of course, getting to work is important, but where do you think that trust building comes in? It comes in with those first two steps. That's how you begin to build trust, with those first two steps. And believe it or not, getting to work, doing the things that you need to do is really easy once you have built trust. That's the reason why trust is at the center of building community. Once you've built that community, you're able to get to work. Of course, when you're doing the work that you're doing, you got to make sure everyone's voice is heard. Use the tools such as polls, such as chat. We're going to look at one called Minty Meter in a few minutes. But use those tools to be able to create connection and make sure that people's voices are heard. One thing that you can do in Zoom as well is the breakout rooms. I would encourage you to try out the breakout rooms. We don't have time to do that today, but I am happy to meet with you one-on-one to show you how to use breakout rooms. And then that last step was about reflection. Now, I know you're probably thinking like, why is she showing a buffet when she's talking about reflection? And believe it or not, don't laugh, but to me, reflection is like a big buffet meal, right? It's like imagine if you're like at this feast. I don't know. It could be at a conference. It could be at a wedding. But invariably, when you go to that conference or you eat off that buffet, you're going to say like, oh my God, this was so good. And you want to share it. You want to share it with the person next to you. You want to share it with the person who prepared the food. You want to share it and say, that was so good. I love it. Let me know how you did it. I want to make it myself. You want to replicate it. But also, there's probably something on that buffet that wasn't as good, may not have tasted as good, maybe would be something that you wouldn't want to try again. Well, the chef needs to know both. They need to know both what you really, really liked, but also what did not go so well and what did you would not try again. So reflection is so important. And when you're in a meeting, when you're working with your partners, I would encourage you to actually spend some time saying, what did you really like about what we did today? You can do that with a poll. You could do it with Minty Meter, which is, again, another way that you can get poll information. You're going to try it out in a few minutes. But it's one of the ways that you can get valuable feedback. And so I would encourage you to do something like that. But you not only need to reflect on how you facilitate it, but you need to reflect on what it is that you did. What were the decisions that were made today? Did people feel heard? That's important. And one of the things that I learned from Visible Network Labs is that when you bring a new partner into the fold, when someone else joins your partnership, or when someone else joins your network, or when someone else joins your team at work, you now have a new network. You now have a new team. You now have a new partnership. So doing the icebreakers and doing the reflections and stuff are things that you want to do until you kind of get in a rhythm of doing things and you know what really works for your team and you know what really does not work. But once that new partner comes on board, you need to go back to doing the icebreakers and going back to doing the reflections because you no longer have the same partnership. You no longer have the same team. Teams and partnerships and networks are all dynamic. So we're always learning from each other all the time. And you have to go through, take that extra time and make people feel included. You have to build that trust. So the one thing that I want to leave you with is that you can create virtual community. Virtual community is created with trust. So if you think about those steps, you want to invest time in the icebreakers. You want to invest time in the small talk. You want to invest time in reflection because that's how you build trust. And then you're able to spend, when you do your work, when you are getting to work, getting decisions done, getting decisions made, doing things that you need to do, it's a lot easier when you have that trust because people want to know that you trust, that they can trust you, that they can trust you with their resources, they can trust you with their knowledge, they can trust you with their heart, their feelings. They need to know that they can trust you. So with that, we're going to process one more time, but we're going to use Minty Meter. And Minty Meter is this awesome program, one again that I learned from VNL because VNL is just full of wisdom, but it's a free online service that you can use to actually gather feedback. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Alex to put this code in the chat. And I want you to use your cell phone or you can open up a browser on your computer and go to mintymeter.com. And then I want you to enter that code that Alex put in the chat. And I want you to write down one thing that you learned today or one thing that you will try. So I'm curious about what you think. So what is one thing that you learned today? Are you guys seeing it, Danielle? Okay, great. Icebreaker. Thank you for putting Minty Meter in there. Thank you for not blaming Minty Meter. And the trust building ideas. All right, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing what you have learned. I want to stop sharing and I want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. So let's do that.
Ericka, can I get you started on one real quick that I saw in the chat? With all of the, emphasis right now and the being positive and optimistic about virtual, what do you do or think about and strategize for people who have limited access to Wi-Fi and computers?
Yeah, that is still a challenge. And I do know in some cases, we have asked people to use their mobile cell phones, their smartphones, the majority of folks in the United States do have a smartphone. However, I do realize for some people, using data can be an issue. It can be expensive. And so one thing I want us to remember is that we're never going to live in a perfect world. We are still finding that despite those challenges, despite the fact that there are areas where there's limited access, we are still finding that virtual communication at this time is really the most inclusive way to communicate and collaborate. But we're never going to find a perfect solution. And that's just being realistic. What are some other questions that you may have?
I've got one here that someone asked, Ericka. Kelly wrote, there is scientific research to support the idea that creativity comes from breakout room interactions. How can we encourage this type of unexpected creativity in a virtual environment?
Oh, well, one of the things that the cool thing about breakout rooms, which are awesome, is that you can actually create chats and use the chat in breakout rooms as well. And I encourage people to use those chats, but you got to save them and bring them back to the regular group. Breakout rooms are awesome, but they're only awesome to the extent that you're sharing with the broader group, because you don't want to create cliques. So you definitely want to use breakout rooms to the extent that you want to actually allow space to generate ideas, but you don't want to create some type of clique where everybody all that's all they want to do. So make sure you're always sharing.
Great. And then we have one other from
and then we're going to go to Maria after you, Alex. Go ahead.
Oh, sure thing. Kamala asked, how long should you allow for small chat at the beginning of a meeting?
Yeah, it really depends on how much time you have, but I always start my meetings a little bit early, but I wouldn't go any more than like 5 minutes. You saw what Danielle did. I mean, even that, but go like about 5 or 6 minutes at the beginning. Believe it or not, even though it's not that long, it's valuable time. And Maria, you had a question.
No, I was just going to point out that it is the first. I have been in Zoom all the time for many years, and the fact that you are presenting but your face is there big, this is so great, because sometimes you get bored of looking at the presentation and not seeing the body of the person that is presenting. So I think that this idea of having both things together on screen is a great one.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, we're human. And so bringing humanity to virtual connection is important. I think we got time for maybe one more question, and then I'm going to have to turn it back over to you all, Alex.
Perfect. Well, we have one left, so that's perfect. Nancy Pohl writes, do you have any recommendations for large conferences? I have attended several online since the beginning of the pandemic and started to develop an adverse reaction because there's no space for interaction. It's a different problem, it seems, than with smaller, facilitated meetings of 50 or 100 people. Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, APHA was, I will leave my comments to myself, but I would actually recommend that you check with Danielle and Alex, because they did a wonderful job with their conference, and it was quite large. And see, Danielle has a friend with her.
I told her, I said, this is one of those meetings where it's okay to come on and say hi.
Exactly.
This is my Bellamy.
So folks, Alex is going to make the slide deck available to you. I encourage you to look at the slide deck, because it has some information on how you can reach out to me. I want to encourage you to reach out to me if you have some additional questions, or if you want some additional tips and tricks. We could only touch on such a little bit in a limited amount of time, and just thank you for listening to me. So Danielle, It's back in your court.
All right. Well, I know we are at the end of the hour here, but you know, this is one of those things where I felt very relaxed during this webinar. You know, it didn't feel very stressful, and I wish we had a few more opportunities to just be together. And I think that was your intention to make us feel that way. Bye. Sorry. So thank you. And I hope that everyone will continue to just stay connected to us at VNL and to Ericka at County Health Rankings, and you know, keep joining our webinars. I promise you, we will just continue to think about things that can support you in communities and just you know, build friendships and connections. So thank you, Ericka, for giving your time today, and for everyone. Oh, Lisa, hi. Everyone who's joined from recently and afar. It's been really fun. So we hope to see everyone again soon, and have a great rest of your week. Thank you.